Welcome. You're here now, and that's all that matters. Let the weight of your day begin to melt away. As we step gently, quietly, into the folds of the past, imagine yourself drifting, not rushing, not straining, just drifting, slowly into another time. Time when the world was quieter in some ways, yet bursting with the murmur of lives, lived very differently than yours. Tonight, we'll take a slow, meandering stroll through the heart of a medieval city. It's a kind of place where the streets were narrow, the air thick with unfamiliar smells, and life pulsed to a rhythm shaped by bell towers, merchant carts, and the slow turning of wooden wheels. Don't worry, you're not expected to run, to react, or even to stay alert. Just listen, and let the sounds and stories of a long-vanished time settle around you like a warm blanket. Our journey will begin in the daily world of an ordinary city dweller, then drift into the tale of a baker during the time of plague, then downward, into the buried secrets of medieval latrines, and finally, upward, into the candlelit home of a wealthy town mayor. But first, let's open our eyes, just a little, to the early morning of a typical day in a medieval... Why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval city? Imagine yourself waking slowly on a straw-stuffed mattress, tucked into a small wood-beamed room. The ceiling slopes low above your head, the wood darkened by years of smoke curling up from the hearth. Light seeps in through the cracks in the shutters, soft, gray, and dusty. There is no clock, no alarm. The world wakes you. A distant church bell tolls dull and heavy, marking the earliest hour. You hear the sounds of hooves on cobblestone, the bray of a restless donkey, and someone shouting to move aside. The air is cool, but already thick with smells. Smoke, dung, bread, damp wool. The fire in the hearth has died, and your breath clouds faintly in front of you. Your home is one room shared with your family mother, father, perhaps 2 or 3 siblings all tucked into corners. A cooking pot rests in the ashes. A single candle stub stands in a clay holder. Clothes are not stored so much as hung to dry or worn day after day. You rise, stretch carefully, and step outside. The door opens directly onto the street. There is no sidewalk, no tidy separation between home and public life. The narrow lane is packed earth and old stone, worn smooth by feet and carts. Your first task is simple: water. But it requires a walk, a short one perhaps, to a communal well. You carry a wooden bucket, careful not to stumble on uneven stones or the refuse that spills from nearby homes. Chamber pots are emptied out of upper windows. You keep one eye on the ledges above. The well stands at a crossroads, surrounded by gossip. A few women gather with buckets of their own, wrapped in shawls, their voices low and rhythmic. You wait your turn. You listen. Talk of illness, of bread shortages, of someone's pig escaping and ruining a merchant's stall. You fill the bucket and begin your walk back. Careful now, don't spill too much. Along the way, you pass a tanner's workshop. The smell of it turns your stomach a reek of urine, soaked hides, and old lime. Beside it, a baker's hearth throws warm smells of rising dough into the street. 2 boys chase a goose. An old man sells eels from a wooden tub, their silver bodies slick and slapping. You are hungry, but there's little to eat this early. Crust of bread if you've saved one. Maybe a pot of thin ale to wash it down. Water is rarely trusted. Brewed drinks are safer if weak. There are no bathrooms here, no privacy really. The city is a patchwork of lives layered over each other. You relieve yourself in a small bucket and empty it later in the gutter or a shared cesspit. Work begins. If you are apprenticed, you walk to your master's shop, a blacksmith perhaps, or a weaver. If not, you might sell firewood, carry goods, or beg. By midday, the streets grow more crowded. Carts creak along, their wheels catching in muddy ruts. Chickens scatter underfoot. Merchants call from stalls, hawking onions, salted fish, herbs bundled in twine. Overhead, the buildings lean in toward each other. The sun only rarely strikes the cobbles below. The city is dark, even on bright days. Your skin is often dirty, your hands chapped from cold water, your feet sore from the stones. In the background always is the church. The bells mark the hours, the feast days, the funerals. You pass a procession, pale-faced monks murmuring prayers, leading a cart bearing a shrouded figure. A crowd bows their heads. Then life resumes. Evening comes slowly. The light fades. Oil lamps flicker in windows, and the tavern doors swing open. You might have a bowl of pottage, a watery stew of grains, root vegetables, and maybe a scrap of salted meat. And then, back to the hovel. Back to the straw mattress. Back to the smoke-dark ceiling and the distant sound of someone coughing in the next house. You fall asleep to the same sounds that woke you. Hoofbeats, creaking carts, the low drone of voices, and the bell that marks the slow, steady rhythm of another day in the medieval city. Rhythm you have no choice but to follow. And now, let us follow another rhythm, the slow turning of fate and of illness. As we shift our attention to a man with flour on his hands, the plague-stricken baker of 1348 picture, if you will, a narrow street in the heart of a thriving medieval town. The year is 1348. The city hums with its usual noises, boots on flagstones, its clattering carts, and the distant call of church bells. But there is something else in the air now, something quieter, an unease. And in a small shop not far from the main square, a baker rises before the first light. His name has not survived in records, but he would have been known to his neighbors by the smell of his hearth, the warmth of his loaves, and the small kindnesses he may have offered, an extra crust for a hungry child, a smile for a tired mother. He begins his day as always. The dough must be kneaded, the oven stoked. His hands are dusted with flour, and the air inside the shop is dense with the smell of yeast and ash. It is warm in here, a contrast to the crisp spring air outside. But this spring is different. Word has begun to drift through the streets, news whispered from door to door, passed between pilgrims, merchants, friars. Something is moving through the countryside. Something dark. They call it the pestilence, or simply the death. The baker hears it like everyone else, hears of whole villages falling silent, ships moored in the harbor with no crew left to unload them. But he bakes still. Bread must be made. The town must eat. He cannot imagine that such a thing could reach his street. But the signs are already there. The neighbor hasn't opened his shutters in days. A delivery boy has not come for the loaves his family usually buys. The churchyard is more crowded than it should be. And then one morning, the baker wakes with a strange ache behind his eyes. His joints feel heavy. His breath comes shorter than usual. But there are loaves to bake. He stands slowly and begins again. His hands tremble as he kneads the dough. He sweats beside the fire, drops a loaf of thing that would have embarrassed him once, but now he barely notices. By mid-morning, he cannot stand. His apprentice finds him slumped against the wall, breathing in short, shallow gasps. A few neighbors gather. They speak in hushed tones. Some offer water. Others step back quickly, shielding their mouths and crossing themselves. The baker is carried home, and soon after, the shutters of his shop are closed. There is no burial with fanfare, no proper rites. The priest is too burdened, the graveyard too crowded. A cart passes in the night, and the baker's body wrapped in a shroud is added to others. A bell tolls somewhere in the distance, slow and heavy. But the story doesn't end there. His apprentice, a boy of perhaps 13, keeps the fire alive for a few more days. He bakes what he can. Doesn't understand all that's happening, but he knows the city still needs bread. He delivers loaves to doorsteps and runs back quickly, his face covered with a cloth. And then one day the smell of baking disappears entirely from that street. The shop remains shuttered. The oven grows cold. Neighbors walk past quickly, eyes downcast. The rhythm of the city has changed now. It is slower, quieter, broken in places. Bells ring too often. Streets are less crowded, and every cough, every fevered breath is watched with dread. But the baker, nameless, flour-covered, steady, had continued his work until the end. And in his small way, he fed the city when it was most afraid. He is not remembered with statues or inscriptions. But somewhere beneath the stones of the city, beneath centuries of dust, his story lingers. In the scent of baking bread that still floats from modern ovens, in the idea of duty, even in fear, and now, we move deeper still, below the city's surface, into the places forgotten, into what was left behind. Unearthing the lost latrines beneath the cobbled streets of medieval towns, tucked behind timbered homes and walled courtyards, there lay something unassuming, yet essential. The medieval cesspit, a latrine, necessary if unspoken part of daily life. Imagine yourself standing in the small backyard of a medieval house, just a few strides across. A wooden seat set above a deep shaft, often shared between several families. There's a faint odor in the air, not overpowering, but ever present. Around it, nettles grow, undisturbed. Clay pots lie broken nearby. And no one speaks of this place, unless they must. Centuries later, archaeologists gently lower themselves into the silent earth beneath cities like London, York, and Lubeck. They brush away soil not to find gold or jewels, but the remains of these hidden pits. What they discover there is not glamorous, but it is illuminating. The waste has long since broken down, returning to the soil. But within the layers of compacted sediment lie fragments of lives once lived. Cracked comb made of bone, child's wooden toy, water warped but still smiling. Oyster shells, cherry pits, and fish bones, tiny remnants of yesterday's meals. There is a curious intimacy in these findings. These are not treasures looted from palaces. These are the everyday cast-offs of ordinary people, things they touched, tasted, used, and discarded. And yet centuries later they speak. One latrine, for instance, reveals the presence of parasitic eggs under the microscope: tapeworm, roundworm, whipworm. A silent testament to the conditions of the time. Poor sanitation, contaminated water, the quiet, invisible burdens carried by the poor and wealthy alike. Elsewhere, seeds and pollen tell of diets both humble and rich. In one pit behind a baker's home, carbonized crumbs from burnt bread mingle with grains of rye and barley. In another, the bones of a delicately cooked bird, perhaps a capon, suggest a household of greater means. The layers of the cesspit are like pages in a storybook. The deeper you go, the older the story becomes. A change in pottery style suggests a shift in trade routes. A sudden abundance of bones might indicate a feast, or perhaps a funeral. And here, too, there are secrets. In some pits, objects are found that seem out of place. A pair of ladies' gloves, finely stitched. A knife with an inscription carefully scratched along its blade. A tiny carved figure tucked into the corner as though hidden. Were they lost, thrown away in haste, or buried with quiet intention? Even in waste, people left behind their choices. Archaeologists treat these finds with reverence. They sift gently. They document, clean, preserve. Because in these overlooked corners, we hear whispers of daily life. What people ate, what they wore, what they believed was worth keeping, discarding, and always there is the rhythm of their lives. The cycle of waking, eating, working, resting, of gathering water and leaving waste, of repetition, quiet, and necessity. It reminds us that history is not always found in the grand. Sometimes it waits in the forgotten, in the buried, in the latrines tucked behind crooked homes where no one thought to look for legacy. Now, with the final breath of that cool, silent earth, we rise again, up the stone steps, out of the cramped alleyways, and into the hushed, candlelit halls of a very different kind of home, where daily life moved to a gentler rhythm. But a day in the mansion of a town mayor, imagine yourself in the soft, pre-dawn hush of a well-appointed chamber. The shutters are drawn, and outside the city is only just beginning to stir boots on cobblestones, a rooster far away. But inside this home, there is calm. A woven woolen blanket lies heavy on the bed. A silver-handled basin gleams quietly in the morning light. This is the home of a medieval town mayor. Unlike the cramped, smoke-stained rooms of the city's lower quarters, the mayor's house breathes space. High timber ceilings stretch overhead, and stained glass filters the daylight into dappled reds and blues that dance upon stone floors. A faint scent of beeswax and lavender hangs in the air, replacing the more common odors of ash and animals. Servants move with practiced quietness. They lay out garments: linen underclothes, a padded doublet, a fine woolen robe dyed deep green. Stitched carefully at the seams, boots are polished. A ring bearing the town seal is set carefully on a cushion of soft cloth. The mayor must be ready for more than comfort. He is, today, as every day, a man expected to be seen, to judge, to decide. Downstairs, breakfast waits. Bread that has not been scorched, fruit preserved in honey, and a soft cheese wrapped in cloth. The cup is filled with warmed ale, just a touch spiced. There is little haste only, the methodical rhythm of someone accustomed to control. As the mayor steps out, his pace is unhurried. His path takes him through the city, but not as others experience it. He moves above it, in a way guarded by reputation, surrounded by space others cannot enter. He steps over puddles without pause. He is known. The mayor's duties, though sometimes ceremonial, are many. In the morning, he attends the council chamber. Behind its wooden doors, beneath a carved beam ceiling, matters of trade, tax, and law are discussed. He listens, often more than he speaks. His words are measured. His presence alone carries weight. Later, he may preside over a case, perhaps a dispute over land or the theft of bread. His voice must be even, his mind clear. The people look to him not just as a man, but as the face of the town's authority. It is a burden worn beneath the fine robe. But his day is not all solemnity. In the late afternoon, he might retreat to his private library room lit by the warm gold of beeswax candles. The shelves lined with manuscripts carefully copied by monks. He reads not for escape, but to stay informed. On law, on trade routes, on the doings of nearby cities. His fingers brush vellum pages gently. The quiet is deep here, deeper even than the streets at night. Dinner is a more formal affair. Guests may be invited, guild leaders, visiting merchants, clergy. The hall is lit by iron sconces, and the table is long. Platters of meat, stewed vegetables, baked apples, wine flows in moderation. A musician plays softly in the corner, perhaps a lute. Its sound faint and round in the spacious chamber. Voices stay low. Laughter, when it comes, is gentle and brief. And when the guests leave and the fire burns low, the mayor retires once more. His room is still warm from the heat of the day. He may sit briefly at his writing desk, inscribing a thought or two with careful strokes. A journal, message to be sent tomorrow. The ink smells faintly of iron. Finally, he lies down. Above him, the carved canopy of his bed shelters him from the night. Outside, the city sighs in its sleep. Rats scurry through alleys. A dog barks once and is silent. Somewhere far below, someone cries out in a dream, but here the silence holds steady. The mayor, like the city, rests. And we too, having wandered through the hovel, the bakery, the latrine, and now this chamber of peace and privilege. In the stillness of the past, and now, as the soft candlelight fades from the halls of the mayor's home, the distant clatter of hooves and wheels fades into a hush, you can begin to let go of the streets behind you. You've walked the cobbled alleys where every step felt uneven. You've smelled the mingling odors of dung, smoke, and bread. You've heard the splash of the communal well, the creak of wooden shutters, the low murmur of morning trade. You've felt the closeness of it, all the shared walls, the pressed crowds, the struggle for breath in air thick with soot. And you've glimpsed, too, the quiet dignity of a baker trying to carry on beneath the shadow of death. A man who, like so many, lived not for grand deeds but for routine, for warmth, for bread fresh from the oven. A man whose memory lingers not in records, but in the silence he left behind. Beneath the ground you peered into the city's secrets, the pits where refuse became revelation. Layers of time softened by soil, now yielding up clues to the rhythm of ancient lives. A seed, a shard, a bone each, a whisper from the past. And finally, you ascended into a home of carved beams and golden light. You touched the world of power and comfort, of duty wrapped in brocade and velvet. Yet even here the rhythm of life beats steadily, just as human, just as fleeting. So much of medieval city life was a constant negotiation with discomfort, with disease, with one another. Yet beneath it all was a kind of order, a cadence, a shared understanding of survival, of community, of time marked not by clocks, but by bells, bread, and seasons. And now, here you are, at the edge of that world. You can let it drift now, like smoke from a chimney curling into the night sky. Let the muddy streets fall away. Let the tolling bells grow faint. Let the flicker of torchlight fade to dark. For all the hardship, all the noise and narrowness of those city walls, you are here in this quiet space, far from the jostle and clamor, safe. Still, the past is past. And so, at last, may you sleep well.